Okay, welcome everybody to this latest Author Roundtable discussion. I am Matthew Turner, and I'm delighted today to be joined by Eileen McDargh, who is a fellow writer and, like myself, has written several books over the years. The first one, I believe, back in 2007. Is that correct, Eileen?
Actually, the first one was 1985.
1980. Oh, well,
I was 10 years old.
We certainly missed a few there, so we will get back to the origins. Now, anyone who's watched these author roundtables before knows that this isn't a promotional thing per se. This is just two writers talking about the writing process, what we've learned. And today's overarching topic is like our growth as writers from first book to latest book. We've both gone through this iteration a few times, and I'm excited. Eileen and myself have had a few conversations in the last few months, and we're excited to be diving into this one, recorded, to share with you. So, Eileen, first of all, thanks for joining me. I'm really excited to dive into this with you. Just before we hit record, you mentioned something interesting, and it certainly aligns with me. You said you like, first and foremost, when it comes to writing a book, you write for yourself. And I'm like that too. I'm always someone who, if I write a book, if I commit to a book, it comes from a selfish place. It's comes from a place that I need to write this for me. I need to write this to help process what's going on in my head. And it sounds like you went through the same kind of process over the years.
In fact, if I could go back to the 1985, I was working for a public relations firm handling their multinational clients. And Matthew, I got to the place, if I wrote another press release, I was going to throw up. I said, I can't do this. I can't do this anymore. And I did not have a job, but I quit. And more people came to me and said, how did you do that? I said, well, if you're working at something that doesn't feed your heart, you have to get out. And so as I listened to them question me, I thought, I need to write for myself as to why I did this. So the first book is entitled Work for a Living and Still Be Free to Live. And it got a couple of awards. It's not in print anymore, but that process to be able to say, how do you work for a living and still be free to live? And what is it that you're looking for? So that was the start of the writing journey. That was the first book that I did.
I totally relate to that. I don't know about yourself, but I've always found I learn when I write. If I read a book, or if I take a course, or if I listen to a lecturer give a lecture, I can take it in and I can learn to an extent. But in order to properly process it and relate to it and come to terms with it, I need to literally write it down. And more often than not, I need to do it in a frame of the story. At least if I approach a big project, I like to, create characters. I like to create worlds. I like to, delve in so I can create an avatar for myself in that world and simultaneously walk side by side with said avatar. It doesn't feel quite as real and raw then, but I'm still taking those steps. I'm still going through the process. And it usually focuses around some kind of theme, some kind of worry, some kind of question that's on my mind. And this is how I figure it out. This is how I learn. This is how I grow. And every single one of my books have had that in common. It sounds like it's been a similar process for you.
Well, except that I envy what you do is that you create an alternative person, an avatar, as you said. And that avatar is, quote, you. And you have them go through this, like your last book, you go through this journey. Going to different places, and you put words in the avatar's mouth. For me, it's more that I bring other people, tell me the lesson that you've learned. So all of not all my books, a number of them have. The last two were me working with people who could be case studies. Tell me how you did this, so I could learn from others. So I'm not creating a character as much as I am making some individuals come alive. Now that's not to mean that two of my books have no characters. There's no plot. It's just, I need to get this. I need to understand this. One is called Gifts from the Mountain, Simple Truths for Life's Complexities. And this came because my husband and I are backpackers. And this time we were by ourselves on this horrible part of a mountain in California. And it was a terrible trip. I thought, we're never going to get out of here alive. And I was so angry. He didn't have a map. He didn't know where it was going. And I thought, okay, I either have to figure out why I'm doing this or I'm going to kill the guy. And so I had a little notebook. And every time I'd see something, I said, okay, there's a lesson. And so it actually got the Ben Franklin Gold Award, as they called it a gift book, but it really is. I wrote it to say, because I'm a strong believer in metaphor. If I can create from this experience a couple questions, and then I have what I call a conversation fire starter guide. When is a book more than a book? When it creates a conversation. So out of each one of those lessons, here are some questions to ask yourself, whether you're a leader, whether you're a coach, whether you're a community member. And so in this case, I was using the external world as metaphor for my own lessons, because I'm going to kill the guy if I can't figure out why I'm doing this. And that's how that book came to be.
Yeah, I find it fascinating. And I don't know where, I've always been quite curious. I don't know whether you've figured it out, but I've always been quite curious, like why that's my particular vocation. That's how I personally figure out how to figure it out. There's always a worry there. There's always some kind of question. There's always some kind of thread to be pulled. And I just can never quite delve into it. I can never quite commit to it unless there's writing involved. And as soon as I involve writing, it just comes out of me. But not only comes out of me, but it doesn't make sense until it is on the page. And I'm able to read it back and edit it and tweak it and iterate it over time. It's just like a bit of a whirlwind when it's inside there. Once I get it down on the page, it feels like it's more processed.
Right. Do you keep a journal?
Not at the moment. I've gone through journaling on and off over the years. And yeah, it's something that I've tried to commit to, and it's just never come natural to me because, as I said earlier, I find it easier when I'm able to create a character. And when I'm journaling, I'm always writing as me. And sometimes I'm good with that. Sometimes I'm in a particular place and I feel very comfortable and I find it very therapeutic. Other times I just resist it in every sense. Whereas if there's a character involved,
right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the phases could last days, weeks, months. It's really difficult to kind of predict. But sometimes I find it easy to write as me and journal, whether I'm sharing it online or if it's just me in a notebook. Other times, huge resistance. But if there's a character involved and I'm able to, lean into that avatar, even though that avatar might only have like a fraction in common with me. It's not like, for instance, if we use Beyond the Pale as an example, I'm anything like Ferdinand. But there are elements of Ferdinand in me and there's elements of me in Ferdinand. And we were walking that path together. And that just makes me feel more comfortable, whatever kind of phase I'm in, whatever kind of chapter I'm in my life.
It's interesting. That's interesting. Part of me would question, is there a reason why you can't be you?
This is a good question.
You have to be another character.
Yeah, it is. It is interesting. And it's something which I've always been curious about. It's a way for me to disconnect without disconnecting in a way. I'm able to like face what's in front of me, but it's just a little bit more freeing. I feel less pressure. I feel like I'm able to tackle that particular question or that particular whatever it may be.
That's so interesting. I might have to try this the next time around to become somebody else.
Yeah. This is it. I have no idea why it works for me, and I don't know whether it always will. It's certainly been a comfort for me over the years, and I've spoke to other writers, and some writers kind of get it, and then some writers like they don't. So I'm always intrigued. And you, it sounds like you do keep a journal, and you like to sort of
it's sporadic. Mostly now. Though I just got back from retreat and I read 365 pages of a journal that I kept when Julie Cameron wrote her book called The Artist Way. And she wanted you to keep, to do something she called morning pages every day. So I said, I don't want to do this. Okay, I'll do this. I always make myself do something I don't want to do. And it was so interesting, Matthew, reading it. I saw things about myself that I thought, well, grow up, Eileen. That was years ago. You keep writing and thinking the same thing. It's time to get over that. And
so things, when did you write these journals? Sorry.
That 365, it was at least 15 years ago.
Wow. So then you read them all back just recently. Oh,
I kept it. I bound it. Did one of those spiral bind things.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the retreat, I threw it all away. Because I said, that was then, this is now. I don't need this anymore. And so it was, it reminded me of things that I had forgotten. Yeah. Good things, not so good things. So it was an interesting exercise. The other thing I do sporadically is just write a gratitude journal. What am I grateful for? And I think now in this incredibly dark world that we live in, it's so easy, Matthew, to be pulled into the darkness. And so a gratitude journal, just even 3 things at the end of the day or the first thing in the morning, says, okay, I'm here. What difference can I make today? And thank you very much for coffee. Thank you very much for a warm bed. Thank you very much. I could go feed my Western bluebirds that are out there. And it's to me, it is also one of the keys to being resilient is intelligent optimism. And intelligent optimism is where you look at what face value looks horrible. And you say, okay, of what of this can I control? How can I reframe this in such a way that I see possibilities for me instead of doors? And so that's been a process for me. And it's just for my own well-being. It just, and your listeners, your viewers might not realize I live in the United States, and we're in a terrible place. We're in a terrible place as a country.
Yeah, it's been a surreal few years all around, and every time you feel like we turn a corner, there's another surreal thing. But it's interesting you say about the gratitude channel that I've always thought, like, anyone who is interested in getting into writing and maybe has some kind of resistance, and I imagine most people do have that resistance because you'd be insane not to. It's a very daunting process, literally sitting down and staring at that white blank page. It's intimidating. And it's intimidating, to me, and I'm sure you agree to what it says. It was written in several books. Like that blank white page is daunting. But I always found a good little gateway is a gratitude journal, because anyone and everyone can do it. Like you say, it could just be 3 things, like 3 sentences.
3
and
things.
There's always something to be grateful for.
Right.
Whatever's happening, whatever you're going through, there's always something. If there's not 3 things, there's 2 things. If there's not 2 things, there's always at least 1 thing. And it's great from a writing perspective, because it just forces you to put something on the page, and you've defeated it then. And if you do that enough, day after day after day after day, it becomes less intimidating, and you'll eventually find some kind of flow. But it's also just very freeing from a personal perspective, because, as you say, it's so easy to get caught up in the darkness. It's so easy to get caught up in life, responsibilities. I do it all the time. It's insane. And just taking that 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes to be grateful. If you can do it daily, I don't know what it will achieve, but it will bring a positive impact on anyone's life, I think that.
And it depends to think about when you do it. If you've had this crazy day and you're getting ready to go to bed, instead of looking at your iPhone or taking another email or the other stuff, just stop to breathe and write down what is 1 or 2 things I'm grateful for before you go to sleep. And on the flip side, in the morning, don't pick up the iPhone and look at it. don't. Wait.
Do it.
No, I have to admit, because my alarm is on my iPhone. I end up opening it up, but I'm really not reading email. I will put on, my husband calls it ding dong music, and just sit quiet for 20 minutes and then write 3 things I'm grateful for today. One of which is I've been given today.
Yeah, I think my constant every day would be probably coffee. You mentioned it earlier.
Yeah,
I'm always thankful. I'm always grateful for coffee.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Now, I was interested because I was thinking about what I wanted to ask you, someone who's written multiple books over a long period of time. One of the things which I really was interested to know was the biggest area. Like, I imagine there's so many, but if you were to choose one thing, one area, what would you say the biggest area of growth you've experienced as a writer during that time? Like, when you compare yourself to when you first started writing back in, 85, it sounds, at least in terms of like your first major book project.
Now, this is my biggest lesson. Is that what you want?
Not necessarily a lesson, but an area where you feel like you've grown as a writer. An area where you feel like you compare who you were then to when you sit down and you write and commit to the process now. And you're like, I am appreciative of the journey that I've been on because it's led me to grow in that particular area.
I've never been shy about writing, in that, because it does. Another one of my book is called My Get Up and Go, Got Up and Went. It was, that whole thing was, how we exhaust ourselves with what we do. And that the title of that was something my mom always said. My get up and go, got up and went, when she didn't have any more energy left. So I can't say there was a time, but with each successive book, not that it gets easier, but I think I'm more trusting of the process. Because when I first started writing, what are people going to say? This doesn't make sense. But to trust, if I'm meant to do this, that voice is going to come through me. And that only happens over time, when you finally discover, what I am a writer, and I do trust the process. I just finished consulting with one lovely man, and he's put together a business plan, and he wanted me to read it, and it made no sense. Yeah, no. You're spelling everything, just to be able to logically look at how, because a business plan is a story. It's, this is what we're going to do. These are the characters. This is the plot. This is how we hope it will end. But he wasn't making a story. And so I realized this today, that because I've done this for so long, the ability to create story out of a business plan, out of your adventure that you have, how are you going to get rid of all the stuff you don't want and create the life you do? Those are all stories. And we learn by stories. And so over the years, I'm learning to trust the process of creating the story.
And it is a process, isn't it? And what I've always found interesting with that is everyone's got their own little process. Like, there's the process of actually creating a story, and there's loads of nuances going into that. But it sneaks up on you. Subconsciously, you're able to take a situation and rework it into a more engaging way. And I don't know about yourself, but I take that for granted. Sometimes I do it, and I don't understand how other people can. But again, if I look back to who I was, 15, 20 years ago, I would have struggled. It's just been an evolution of being able to just look at a situation and see the story in it. Because there's always the story there. Whatever's happening, there's always story involved. That's constant. There's always something there that can be manifested into a story. And I suppose as a writer, when you go through, and it doesn't matter whether you're writing fiction, non-fiction, whatever, if you're going to keep writing, if you keep getting deals, and if you keep getting to a process where a point where you can publish, then there needs to be some kind of engaging story, or
Mm-hmm.
lots of engaging stories in there. So it's amazing how you can just hone in on its situation and cut through the clutter, and it's like a shining light. It's like, there's a story.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to start here and it's go to there and it'll end up there. And it's an amazing
Sometimes we don't know where the ending is.
No, often not.
So I'm curious, because are we doing both video as well as podcast?
We are, yeah.
Oh, okay. Because what I wanted to say, if people are only listening as a podcast, what they do not see is your hand making a circular motion. You are doing this as though you are rolling down a road. Your hand kept doing this circle, this circle, this circle. And I think that's part of the process, if you will, of writing. We start in one, it moves, but that circle is like a wheel, and it doesn't stay in one place. It's not like a water wheel. It's like a wheel on a bicycle, and it moves to another place, and it moves to another place. So I was intrigued by your hand motion as you talked about that.
That's good. I like that. And it's very, very true. Constantly, the process, and that brings me to the other point earlier. We all have our own process of writing as well. And I don't think any two writers have the same process. Like, we can take inspiration from one another, but if I was to try and copy our process, it probably wouldn't work for me, and vice versa. And it's one of the things which I found most fascinating about these author roundtables, because I've been able to peek into the lives of another writer and get a perspective of their process. And there's familiarities and similarities, but there's always differences. And I love those differences. I find it fascinating, because you would think the process would be the same, or you would think at least the process would be very similar, because it is just like there's structure to story, but there's less structure to the actual art of putting pen to paper.
And I think it also depends on the makeup of the person who's the writer. So, for example, Matthew, are you a morning person or an evening person?
I'm not a morning person. Definitely more of an evening, but really more late morning, afternoon, if I'm being honest. That's where I
is
get
why
my
we're
golden
talking now, and it's getting on to evening time for you. See, I'm a morning person. Yeah. You asked me to write after 5 o'clock at night. I'm going, I didn't think so. I need to carve my best time is in the morning. Yep. If I can cut out all the distractions. So if I have something I want to write, except if it's on a deadline, like when we finish this conversation, I have 2 things I need to write today. But normally I would do it in the morning. So when we talk about the process, we also have to pay attention to where do we get our energy from? Because writing is incredibly energy draining. It can give it back to you, but it can also just, when you're finished, what's that old saying? I hate writing. I love having written.
Yeah.
So we, so we need to pay attention to when we are the writer, what is our peak period? My peak period would not be 11 o'clock at night. I'm sound asleep. But if you told me, like, I get up at 4:30 in the morning, and then I do a little bit of coffee and meditation, and then I run. And when I come back from a 5-mile run, my body's here. And guess what? My brain is here too.
That's great. And what about environment as well?
Sorry,
what about environment too? It's not just the time, it's the environment. Are you someone who likes to be alone, quiet room, some music playing?
Yeah. What's interesting is when I was doing, like commercial writing, that it's hard in an office because you got all this. I found that, and a number of people did this, they write best if they go to a coffee shop where there's
that would be me.
See, there's all this hubbub, but somehow you're alone, but you're not alone.
Yes.
And you have and you focus. You really focus. Like, I would never go to a library to write. It's too quiet.
Thank you. Yes. I've had this conversation with multiple writers, and most don't understand it. They don't understand. They need to be quiet, or they might have a bit of music in the background, but like, how do you write in a coffee shop? And it's like I'm alone. I disconnect from reality. It's just me on that table, but I'm still a part of society. I'm able to look up and it doesn't feel as real. It doesn't feel as pressure filled. A bit earlier, like I was saying, how if I'm able to transport and use an avatar, it just feels less pressured. If I'm surrounded by others, even though I'm in my own little world, it just feels less pressured. If I try to write at home when it's all quiet, it just brings back memories of school halls and doing exams. It just feels too daunting. I can edit in that scenario. I struggle to edit when I'm in a coffee shop. Quite often I'll want to be somewhere quieter. I'll quite often edit at home. That feels different. But when I'm writing and I need the creativity to come out, it just does not come out when I'm alone. And I've got to say, I am so thankful that I managed to get all the writing part of Beyond the Pale done before lockdown. It was quite serendipitous in that sense, because if I had to do writing just in home, I would have struggled. Like I struggled writing client work when there's deadlines and there's accountability. I know that if it was just me and my book and I was my own accountability and there wasn't the deadline, it just would not have got done. Yeah. Because the thought of writing at home in that, so I just terrifying.
Yeah. I think the other thing that helps, this is crazy, but I am an outdoor person. I love the sun. I love to see the sun come up. I like to see the sun go down. I like to take, right now I have my Western bluebirds are eating. And there's something about being grounded in nature for me that also fills me back up again. See, everything you and I do, in my belief, Matthew, is an energy. It's either an energy drainer or an energy maintainer. And so when we write, we want the energy maintainers. What drains our energy? It can be like I could not write in a messy environment with books and papers and that would energy. That'd be crazy. You're looking at me right now in my office. You'll notice that the back is empty. Now I have papers in front of me. I have some other stuff on the counter, but it's neat. It's organized because I need that for my environment as an energy maintainer. Chaos would be an energy drainer to me.
It is interesting. I'm the same. Yeah, I like to have order. I like to have things in their specific place. I don't like it to be too messy. I like it to be quite minimal. But yeah, I think a lot of people will have that very romanticized version of a writer. Like someone like a Roald Dahl figure here in the UK. You grow up and he was just famous for writing in the bottom of the garden in his shed with just piles of paper and books and everything just messy, and it just looked like a shed. And I couldn't imagine anything worse.
No,
it would just be absolutely horrendous. If someone forced me and was like, "You're so famous now, you can't go and write in coffee shops, you've got to do it in your office," it would have to be a very ordered office. It would have to be an environment that, like you say, energized me rather than anything else. It would need order, it would need structure, it would need to be full of things that I loved and nothing more. Things would have to be in their place. Yeah. Otherwise, it would just distract me.
Yeah.
And like you say, if something isn't giving you
I
energy,
think you and I could write together. You might stay up later than I do. we could go to the coffee shop. We would have everything nice and neat. You could have music if you wanted, but I'm going to bed before you.
Would be a good tag team. I feel like by the time I'm ready to write, you'd probably finished your session for the day because you start at about 6 o'clock. So it's like tag in, tag out.
Remember, I'm up at 4:30, so that's and it was beautiful. And today I had an eye appointment, so I couldn't do my run, which is really hard. Tomorrow I'll do my run, which for me, again, it's what gives you energy. I live above the beach. I can run down to the beach. I can go across a boardwalk. I can go up steps. I've got a couple nature trails and come back here. And it's about 5 miles. And it's just, it's wonderful. And then I can start the day. And on a day that starts with writing, And the other thing is, I think also, I do get inspiration from the natural world. We just got back from Death Valley, which is in about 6 hours from us. It is the only true oasis in North America. It is the only international dark park it's rated, which means that you don't have all this ambient light. And Matthew, you should have seen the stars. We don't see them here like that. It was this magical night sky with constellations you heard about, but you could never find. And I realize that's one of the things I'm going to write this afternoon, even though it's late before I go to bed, is the wisdom of darkness. See what that did, being in the dark, it showed you what you were missing. And I was missing a lot. And sadly, we had to come home because the green comet, I don't know if you've been reading about it, it's a comet that has not been within viewing distance of the Earth for 50,000 years.
And really? No, I've not heard that.
Yeah, 50, imagine. I keep thinking, how do they know that? 50,000 years. And if I were now in Death Valley, California, next weekend, with the help of a telescope, somebody there, I could see this comet that we won't see again for who knows, 50,000 years.
I love that.
Is that exciting to think about?
Yeah, I find it beyond fascinating, the whole concept of time and space and how small we utterly are. We'll have to save that one, I think, for a future conversation, because that is a rabbit hole right there. That is an existential rabbit hole. This has been wonderful. I feel like that is a wonderful place to bring this to a close. I've personally found it fascinating diving into your process and hearing how we share so many similarities, yet at the same time, there are a number of differences there. And I think that is the whole point. We talked about there being a process. Yeah.
Yeah. We want to be different. Who wants to read the same thing? That'd be like reading a telephone book. Who would read a telephone book? Do you remember a telephone book? Now that I said that, I
do.
Whole generation is never going to know what a telephone book is.
Yeah, they don't. Do they even do it anymore? I can't imagine they do. But yeah, I remember the telephone book. No. Yeah, I can't say I've seen one for me yet, but yeah, I remember growing up with one. Finding my friend's number. Yeah.
Yeah.
For anyone who wants to dive in, learn more about Eileen, where's the best place we can?
Well, if you can spell my name, you can find me. To my knowledge, once my grandmother died, I am the only Eileen McDargh in the planet.
Really?
So it's the Irish spelling of Eileen, Eileen, and McDargh, McDargh. You can Google me. You can go to my website. You can find the books on the website. You can email me from there. We even put, instead of the landline, we put my cell phone there because we're getting too much spam on the landline. So people it's easy. You can find me.
I encourage you to do so. Check out the books. They are some fascinating titles. And yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. Anyone who wants to learn more about me, just head over to beyondbook.co. Similar thing. You can email me, find me on the social media platforms, message me, whatever it is that you would enjoy. And I hope listening, watching to this, however you've consumed it, has been, interesting. Whether you're a writer, a reader, someone who does both. The one thing I hope these conversations bring is it just opens people's eyes to, the various different processes we go through. I find it fascinating. I hope others do too. And Eileen, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. It was my joy.